You're listening to Rookie Pirate Radio, the official anime and manga podcast for InBetweenDrafts.com. I'm John Negroni.
I'm Travis Imus.
And today we're talking about Boruto, both the anime and the manga, examining what we think is the good, the bad, and the Shinobi of this Naruto sequel / spin-off series. But before we get into it, Travis, hold on, sorry, I have to quickly find a way to individually message all of our listeners all at once, since we don't currently have a way for them to reach out to us. Wouldn't that be convenient?
Oh, well, I mean, you could always use the telekinesis jutsu. That is available to you.
Isn't it like the? You mean the telepathy, like
to whatever
telekinesis
it is?
When you move things with your mind?
You are correct there. This bit has already given out, so I'm going to give you a different suggestion. How about you use our email address?
Wait, we have one of those?
We have one of those. Let me give that to you, because you just always seem to misplace the note for that. It's rookiepirateradio@gmail.com. I'll say it again so you actually get it written down.
Thanks, because I was trying to write it down, but you went too fast. What was it?
Yeah, it's rookiepirateradio@gmail.com.
Gmail.com. Got it. Okay.
But if you want to send it to everyone all at once, there's an even better way to do that.
That's more preferable, yeah.
Yeah, that's okay, because we also have a Discord server for InBetweenDrafts.com.
A Discord what?
A Discord server. It's you remember, were you ever on Newgrounds, on the chat rooms in Newgrounds? It's like that, but a little bit better.
There's a name I have not heard in a long time. Wow. But wait, you said a Discord. I'm the one being served.
You are the one being served. You're being served conversations about everything from our normal One Piece manga reviews and discussions to talks about all kinds of anime and other things that we cover on InBetweenDrafts.com.
I guess that's it then. Just anime and manga. That's it.
No, film, music, games, and more. We just have a wonderful smattering of channels where you can come by, hang out. We've been doing a little bit of talking about coffee recently, which has been fun. I'm about to go in there and talk about the Baby Metal concert I went to last night in our music channel. So please come on by and hang out with us.
Sounds like the place to be. I guess we'll have to find some kind of link to put in the show notes for that, so that way everybody could check it out.
Don't worry, I got you.
All right. Well, I wanted to ask you about one thing before we wipe out Boruto and all that entails. Not wipe out in terms of, it's not about to be a hate fest. I don't want anybody to think that. And it's not going to be a love fest, I don't think. But Travis, I know one other thing we debated discussing this week instead of Boruto, because you know how we are with like putting that conversation off. We talked about maybe talking about Frieren Beyond Journey's End, which dropped the first 4 episodes on Friday. But we're putting that off. We're not going to do that yet, because we're going to wait until we get like a full roundtable thing going here, so we could have Allie Johnson up in this heroes party, right?
That's right. But I was very surprised to see them drop 4 episodes, because that'll mean we can talk about it a lot sooner than we were planning on.
That's true. Yeah, we don't have to wait a long time, because we usually get to like 6 episodes when we do roundtables. But it's going to be a while before I think the next break, like 2 weeks. So I think by then, we're going to be in a good position. And I have my review of Frieren, the first 4 episodes, up on In Between Drafts. I think, did you watch 4 episodes of it already, or how much of it?
Yes, I've now seen what you've covered in that review. And nice. You talked it up. You set my expectations pretty high, and we'll talk about it more in depth. But I have to say, I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, I think anybody listening, if you haven't checked it out, highly recommend. And also the manga is just truly, truly good. I love the manga. It's kind of like, it's one of those rare manga that I wouldn't mind reading monthly, because it has such a deliberate pace about it that, like, it's not like when I'm reading something like Black Clover, like going to monthly for that just feels too many breaks, like too many, like, I feel like I don't, for an anime kind of well, it's not anime based, but like kind of like a shonen action kind of thing. It's like, hey, maybe this is a good segue into Boruto. Boruto, I don't think serves well as monthly either. Is that my first hot take that you're gonna like spit at, or what?
No, I can only imagine how much more nonsense it would get into in the early chapters if it had to do this stuff every single week. Like,
so you do prefer it monthly?
I think so. Not necessarily that it's better monthly, but that just not a lot of time passes in the Boruto manga, and I can only imagine what they would have to come up with to do. I don't want to say filler, but to stretch the story. Which, of course, we'll talk about the anime. They found
the anime
tons
already,
of ways to do that.
Yeah, I don't think monthly has ever made a change, honestly, to the way Boruto is laid out. But yeah, I've been kind of dreading this conversation because I think that it can get a little heated unnecessarily. And it's also a little strange that we're having this conversation before I think our inevitable and possibly pre-doomed Naruto discussion. But I guess Naruto kind of comes into play on this too, doesn't it? Because it's not like we can talk about Boruto without talking about Naruto, right? So I guess some context for people. Now, I think we should mention that we're going to be talking about stuff that happens all the way through the manga up to Two Blue Vortex. And I mean, we don't have to start there. We can maybe start with something a little bit more accessible if you haven't caught up, and then we'll give you the warning. But maybe we can just talk about the anime content and where that is at and speak more generally. But I mean, we are going to be peppering in specific things about Boruto. So like if you've never seen Boruto at all, and you're just like, or you haven't read it or anything, you might have a hard time understanding what we're discussing, I think, like within context, right? So I guess that's a good place to start. The anime, the way the Boruto starts off. And what, Travis, I mean, this was like, what, 2017, 2016 was when Boruto, around the time Boruto kicked off. Do you remember? It's been so long.
Yeah,
6 years.
yeah. And it's worth noting that for the purposes of the anime version of Boruto, it came not that long after the actual Naruto anime ended, and I think that has a lot to do with the response to it. You know, you think about other sequel series that exist to bring something to drag something out of the grave, such as Dragon Ball Super. Let's be honest, that's what that's for. But with Dragon Ball Super, you had a gap of 15 years between Z and Super, and that's if you, like me, block GT almost completely out of your memory. So with Boruto's anime specifically, it really did come not that long after that last Naruto movie, which itself was kind of just some made up stuff to round off the series. So this kind of came at like right on the heels of that.
You're talking about Naruto the last? The
last, yeah.
Yeah, which I genuinely kind of liked that movie.
And I'm sure we'll have some talk about anime only content here in a moment, but I think that did create this idea of, I hate to use the term, but Marvel fatigue in regards to Naruto.
Are we talking about shonen fatigue, maybe?
No, not even shonen fatigue, because Demon Slayer would go on to pop off not like 3 years later after this, and Attack on Titan was kind of in its peak at this moment in time. This was
My Hero Academia is what I remember being the sort of like move over Naruto, Boruto, like we're the new cool kids in town.
Yeah, and so I wouldn't say it was shonen fatigue. I mean, it was specifically Naruto, the IP fatigue, is where Boruto kind of begins. And I think that's important context for kind of like why this becomes such a heated conversation.
Yeah, I think my way into this is with Naruto. I think like a lot of people, I started off as watching it on like Toonami, the English dub, watching it through the Chunin exams. And then I think as far as, I want to say like toward the end of the Chunin exams, going into the Tsunade arc. And I remember getting to the end of that and being like, well, I'm not done. I don't want to have to keep waiting for the dubbers to catch up. And Naruto was one of the first anime besides Dragon Ball Z, because similarly, I was sick of waiting, to get through Dragon Ball stuff. And so I started to like catch into Dragon Ball subs as well. But Naruto was the first one where I was doing like watching the subs for Japanese, going all the way through like Naruto versus Sasuke, and telling all my friends, in high school, there were dozens of Naruto fans. Let me tell you, who were essentially, because this was like 2008, 2007, so it was like right at the end of my high school time. But I remember telling people like, no, there's a way to actually keep watching Naruto. We don't have to keep waiting anymore. And getting into Naruto Shippuden right as that was weekly, in like simulcasting. And that, I think, is like one for me, like it was a big turning point in a lot of more weebs, like in the late 2000s, actually like getting into like Japan stuff as it's coming out. And Naruto was a big harbinger of that. I think Bleach was too, but Naruto, I remember being a way bigger deal. Like way more people cared about that series. So long way of saying I caught all the way up through Shippuden, was watching weekly, and that too I got sick of waiting. So Naruto is like one of the first like manga I got into outside of One Piece. And so although I should say I think I read all the Dragon Ball Z manga before I ever got into the Naruto one, but that's another story altogether. And you know what I learned in all this time, Travis, of like going from like through that like anime gradient, where it's like you start off on the most sort of like, I'm scared of, Japanese, like the Japanese language, all the way going into like, I have to now read the manga like every week. I don't want to have to wait for the anime anymore. I learned that Naruto works better as a manga. And I think like that's the biggest stark difference for me between Naruto and Boruto, is I think the Boruto manga is genuinely just badly done. And it's like in terms of the pacing and the art style and just the basic aesthetic. And the Boruto anime, at least the first chunk of it, I thought was way more entertaining and good for what it is compared to the manga, which picks up way after where the anime does, because the anime has its own like built-in extended prologue, essentially. I threw a lot at you there, a lot of shadow clone hot takes. What do you think?
Well, I think I've literally said it on this show before. I completely agree. I think the Boruto anime is, against all odds, better than the manga. Again, we don't want to get into the spoiler territory quite yet, but the manga opens kind of very much in media res in the worst possible way. In the worst possible way. And
we should say real quick, right, that technically Boruto starts at the end of Naruto Shippuden, right? Like at the the last part of the manga ends with like a look into here's where the spinoff is going to happen.
Yeah, it basically does. And that is more or less exactly where you find the manga starting. And I understand why they did that, but what you get as a result of that is a bunch of characters with emotional baggage and hangups with not a lot of context for doing so. And it does not endear Boruto specifically as a character to anyone. I've never met anybody who looked at that version of the character and had anything other than a bit of animosity. And of course, it is also worth noting that the Boruto manga is not directly done by Masashi Kishimoto. He's supervised it. He created the characters and things, so they follow his kind of design language, especially Boruto, because as you know, he technically appears in the end of the Naruto manga. But this is actually the first part of the Boruto manga is scripted by Yukio Kodachi, and the art is by Mikio Ikimoto, and there is a lot of differences going on there. Whereas the anime does not start in that media res place and is more or less the exact same staff from Studio Pierrot that was doing the Naruto anime to begin with. So it's a very clean transition into the new series. And I think that helps a lot.
I agree, just in the sense that because with the anime, I think that they have like a better way into what can we do with this series that the original Naruto couldn't do. And I think some people dislike how different Boruto is from Naruto, but in the same breath will sort of like complain that Boruto is a clone of Naruto, which it's not. It's a completely different kind of, I guess, I don't want to say like story, because it's not that different, but it's clearly like a response to Naruto. It's kind of an extended like, all right, where can this story go from here in a way that's sort of interesting? And it's subverting a lot of things. So for example, Boruto is nothing like Naruto, the character. Boruto, I mean, he has like a couple of bratty tendencies, I guess, but he has totally like a totally different nature versus nurture thing going on. Whereas Naruto, the character, he is somebody who is like an outcast, right? Like that's the whole basis, the swing, we get it. They just go back to that over and over again. And the show is sort of about him like slowly winning the respect of everyone. And this series, it's not trying to like shoehorn a reason for Boruto to be like an outcast, at least not in the first part. But it's sort of analyzing like, what if a shonen had a main character like after, you know, the big battle thing happened? You know, it's one of the things I like about Frieren is like, that's also a subversive kind of like, this is after, you know, the big typical fantasy stuff, the big fantasy adventure happens. What about all this existential dread afterward? And it's like, you know, you can never really go home again, like all of those themes. Boruto is sort of like, what if your dad was the protagonist and you kind of find yourself feeling like, you know, he's the hero, he did all these great things, but he puts all of that before his family. And I want to start with this, Travis. What is something you think Boruto does better than Naruto? Maybe just in like its early goings, but we can also go further into it if you feel like that is necessary, I guess.
The very, very first thing that I will say, and this is specifically a credit to the anime, is that it spends a significant amount of time, especially in the beginning, in those very first episodes, actually asking the question of why does Boruto want to be a shinobi? Why does he want to follow this similar path as his father? Because that is literally Naruto's driving, you know, thing is he wants to become a great shinobi to earn people's respect. Why does Boruto want to be a shinobi? There isn't really an answer to that question. The manga doesn't even offer a good answer to that question until much later, after he's had some trials and tribulations. In the anime, the first several arcs are about creating that answer, because he's not a shinobi. He's not at the end of his training. He's at the beginning of his training, even more at the beginning than Naruto was. He's literally an enrollee at the school. And that means that you are seeing him from step one. He doesn't even know what he's really doing yet. And that is such a good play, because that's where the original Naruto manga started and very quickly got away from, was this kind of formative part of the character. I think that's why at the same time My Hero Academia was taking off, because you could actually see the each little like learning experience and training that Deku and the kids went through versus, say, you know, again, kind of just showing up and Boruto's already got the headband on. You know, the anime actually like makes him earn the headband.
You're talking about like progression, like structured progression, you know. And I think that anime and manga in particular of the last 7 to 8 years has transitioned into the isekai craze, which is this idea that like our anime and our manga have to be like video games, where everything is about experience points and leveling up and having these kinds of like, all right, this is the part of the story where it's episodic, but it's part of a larger segment, which is like the end of this segment, Deku is going to be like 10% better and closer to this like main goal. Whereas Naruto wasn't really like that. It did have elements of that, because at least in the early Naruto stuff, where it's like, this segment is about how Naruto is going to get the Rasengan. You know, here's the way like Naruto is going to be able to control his wind affinity. And so it did that to some extent, but it was way more haphazard about it.
It was way more Dragon Ball than I would say like a My Hero Academia, which you know, makes sense to a certain degree, especially given Dragon Ball was a direct influence on Naruto. But again, I really think putting them back in the school and letting them stay in the village, in the school, all of the tension coming from interacting with each other rather than some sort of like national threat really, really does it justice at actually setting the bar, admittedly low when it comes to stakes, but it also sets it really, really high in terms of where these characters can go. And not just Boruto, but his classmates, including classmates that the manga will not focus on for most of the time.
I think that's why the anime is smart about starting with that look into the future of being like, the stakes will get very high, but we're going to tell a slow story to get to that point. Like, here is a kind of brief glimpse of like the village in ruin, Boruto fighting Kawaki, and like him apparently being like taken over by what looks like a curse mark. And that is like such a strong tease to go right into like, and here's like the academy adventures of young Boruto, right?
Yeah, it makes it way more of it feels like his life is flashing before his eyes, like a full narrative. And it also gives us a lot of time to see how the village has changed since the end of Naruto Shippuden, which is a really good idea, especially since it really does seem like the idea is to emulate like post-war Japan, like the 90s in particular, with a lot of technological advancement, development of large transit models, entertainment, digital entertainment in specific, that we get to see a lot of that in the anime that the manga just does not do.
Yeah.
And all of it's good.
Yeah, I think like the details and I think the expansion of the world building, it reminds me a lot of Legend of Korra. Like, okay, let's take a look into like, this is what a world is like when the like nations are like getting along. We see like technology progressing. We see, just kind of like the benefits of peacetime. And it kind of gives you a better sense of like, this is what they were fighting for and it was worth fighting for, in a way that I think Naruto, the series, sometimes was so dramatic, sometimes so high stakes and cynical about its world that I didn't fully buy a lot of it in terms of like the Hokages themselves kind of, not the Hokages, but all the different Kages, right? The shadows all coming together from these like different nations to fight this common threat. And I think Naruto always just kind of made that like a given. Whereas I do think that Boruto has, I think, more of an interesting kind of tension of like, we have this like really great peacetime and you feel like you don't want to lose it. Like, you don't want to lose all this hard fought, progress that the Shinobi world has achieved. On the other hand, Boruto is pretty interesting in how it kind of starts to poke at the idea of like, with all of this technology getting better, what do we still need Shinobi for? And I think the scientific ninja tool stuff, I kind of genuinely hate it, because I think that it's kind of a world building breaker, just in terms of like how it just spits in the face of like anything mystical and intriguing about this world. That's a big hang up for me, but I do at least appreciate the idea being like, getting to the point where some of this stuff is dated and like this world of ninjas doesn't have to be the way it is forever. And that ties into Boruto feeling like, especially in the early goings, like, what do we really need Shinobi for, right?
Yeah, it's a good question that it asks, and in that regard, it's a good place to start. It's if you're gonna continue this brand, and my personal pet theory is Shueisha basically would put a gun to Kishimoto's head and said, "You're gonna draw us a kid, right? Like, come on, you're gonna do it, right?" Because they, I sometimes worry about what Shueisha is going to do when One Piece actually ends. Because I mean, man, Oda says he doesn't want to draw manga anymore, and like, there are options now.
Well, the fun can't last forever. Everything with it, we appreciate things all the more when they have an ending, right? I glance over at Bleach. I glance over at Dragon Ball, Naruto. Yeah. That does maybe we kind of want to bring up another thing that maybe is a hot take, but something that I do think that Boruto kind of has that I wish Naruto had more of. I think Naruto's like first 100 or so episodes, really like once you're getting through to like him and Sasuke's like splitting off, right? Great character development. I think it's a great starting place of like seeing where Naruto starts at 0 and just like painfully climbs his way and is learning all the same. Once we get into Shippuden, I think that Naruto grows less and less. He starts just to become a paragon of like the talk no jutsu, instead of really feeling like a character who does still have a lot more to learn, who can like fail and fall down and all this. Boruto, I think that hasn't happened in the same way. I actually think that Boruto's kind of character development has been kind of sneaky, subtle, and different, but definitely like a clear mark of like where he is now in the manga, and seeing like what he's had to like learn and like unlearn about his world and like the things that he took for granted. That stuff I think is actually really well done. And I think that even if like a lot of the way to get there, especially in the manga, is just painful, just in a sheer entertainment fashion, I kind of dig the way that Boruto himself is written. I don't really get a lot of the hate that Boruto. I don't really totally understand a lot of the hate that he gets as a character. I think it's because people just hate that arc, where he's like super mean to Naruto. And I think that it's kind of necessary, though, to get to the place where he ends up. That's my hot take.
I mean, I could definitely sympathize with it again, especially if you're coming to it straight from the manga. It is... There is not a lot of good context for it. He really does come off as petulant. Again, I think it's something that the anime does a much better job of, because they take time to build up to it and give it a lot more context. I think that really does it a lot of favors.
Other thing,
but since you're talking about pain,
yeah, go ahead. I was going to say another positive thing, but
okay. If we want to stay on the positives,
just one more positive thing. It's something you already touched on. When we talked about Boruto last, was just, and this is a Two Blue Vortex thing, coming back to the more unique character designs and getting away from, I think as you described it, these kind of like safe and like, I just wanted to draw this quickly, kind of everybody's wearing the green vest, instead of like really where we started, where like all the different like shinobi that like are with Naruto too, and Chunin exams and everything. They just like look cool. They had such unique like kind of character sets and power skills and everything. And I think Naruto, especially Shippuden, kind of really like throws all of them under the bus, really just moves away from what makes them interesting, and it becomes very bland. Whereas I think Boruto is going in the opposite direction, where they're getting more interesting as it goes along, which I deeply appreciate that, especially when it comes to Boruto's kind of like Team 7. I think that it's just a better constructed unit where you don't have the Sakura problem, and you kind of feel like everybody has their unique strengths and weaknesses, and it's not always super clear, well, who is like the strongest of Team 7? Arguably Mitsuki, arguably Boruto, depending on, certain things that have to do with him out of his control. But then Sarada, you also can't discount because of like, certain power-ups that she gets. To me, it just feels like a more interesting group, compared to, I think, Naruto flailed in terms of like any character who wasn't Naruto or Sasuke, if that makes sense.
No, I think I would agree with you, actually. There are multiple, notably female characters who have not just recurring roles, but like actual impact on the story. They have agency. They have goals that have very little to do to their, relationships to men. Sometimes they'll even pass the Bechdel test, compared to what Naruto eventually devolved into, which was this sprawling cast that somehow always just came back to talking about the same 2 to 3 characters, and the conflicts between all of this vast array of characters always seemed to be over girls and liking them. It's kind of weird. Like, I get the parallels with Kakashi and Obito and Naruto and Sasuke and everything, but come on, man, it's really dumb. That's not what's happening in Boruto, and I think that is a credit a little bit to having some fresh blood writing parts of this story, rather than just be like Kishimoto just more or less continuing to write Naruto.
All right, now I want to start trashing. Okay, look, this is a softer trashing kind of thing. When it comes to the Naruto of Boruto and the way he is as a dad, first of all, I do not understand this man. I don't understand his choices. And a lot of the time, I understand, like, Boruto has every right to get on his case, and good for him, because the way Naruto is written here doesn't make sense to me. And also, I have a lot of beef with Sasuke in this series, in Boruto. So where to begin? First off, I just want to say, when it comes to Naruto, I get it. He was raised by the third Hokage. Of course, he ignores his son. And I say that kind of tongue in cheek, Travis, but
No, you're completely right.
it's always been a gaping, I don't even want to say plot hole, because that doesn't totally cover it. More of like a plot oversight, where it gets to the point in Naruto Shippuden where we find out how Naruto's parents died, and the way that Naruto gets ignored and, feared by the entire village. And then when you like rewatch the series and you recontextualize like Naruto's isolation, you have Kakashi, you have the third Hokage, you have these people who loved Minato, who promised, like Jiraiya too, all these people who like should be there for Naruto, should help raise him. They just ignore him actively, and it's never made sense to me. It's like, if you go back to that early stuff, it's like Jiraiya doesn't even care about his like godson. Like look at the way that they first meet. It makes no sense. Like it genuinely is just like a total, I don't even know. It's like things just sort of changed and got out of like, oh, maybe it would be cool if Jiraiya trained the fourth Hokage. And there's something kind of weird about it. Like the way that Kakashi, they try to write in the anime, like what happened when the third Hokage told Kakashi he'd be training Naruto. And they try to like lampshade it. But I'm sorry, Travis. It's just dumb. It's just very dumb.
No, it does. It's the side effect of how Kishimoto was writing the story. Despite the fact that he drew a character that looked exactly like an adult Naruto, he somehow didn't come to the conclusion that Minato was Naruto's father. Spoilers for a 15-year-old manga, for a long time. And I think that busted the story in a bunch of different ways.
Well, I remember when people thought that Pain was going to be Naruto's father, from the silhouette, right, of the when we meet more of the Akatsuki in Shippuden, and that was a big thing because I don't think we saw that he had red hair, but there were people speculating like, oh, maybe that's why it was always a red herring that he was the fourth Hokage son, all that stuff. But no, we clearly worst kept secret. Anyway, when it comes to actually Boruto, I do not understand, first of all, why Naruto always has his clones at his house, but he himself never, like, he has to do all the paperwork, right? He has to do all this tedious stuff. Why don't his clones just do that? And like, sure enough, like later into the series, that is like what starts to happen. And I've never understood, like, that's the big beef, right, that Boruto has with his dad, is that like he sends a clone to spend time with his family and doesn't seem to care. But like, what would the issue be with Naruto just having his clones do that? And it's that same kind of thing where it's like, I feel like it's because that the story needs to be that way.
Right. And you have this, the clones themselves are kind of a gaping problem, because you're right, they do solve the issue. Like, he is literally a one-man army. He is the defense force for the village, right? So it's supposed to paint him as a workaholic, I think, and the metaphor just doesn't quite get there.
Yeah, it's like a metaphor that they came up with before they actually like wrote it out and really analyzed, like, does it actually make sense? Along those lines, I also have a lot of issues with really the Sasuke of this series, because he just does not strike me as the same Sasuke from Naruto, just at all. And to be fair, Sasuke's never been a consistent character. He's always just sort of flitted around in terms of like who he is as a person. And I think it is one of the gaping issues with Naruto is the Sasuke of it all, because I just feel like, I don't know what it was, if like Kishimoto just couldn't decide what he wanted to do with Sasuke until the very end. I don't know. But by the time we get to Boruto, we have this guy who his mission, his goal has been to restore his clan. He does not behave like a person who wants to restore his clan. And it's a huge missed opportunity for Boruto, because here's how you could position these characters. You would have Sasuke as the one who is the person who's like actually being there for his family, who actually is being there for Sarada. And like their conflict could mirror the conflict Boruto has with Naruto, where she feels like he pays too much attention to her because he's so obsessed with her fulfilling like the legacy of the Uchiha. Like they could have done all kinds of things of like one of Sasuke's main motivations being restoring the Uchiha clan, finding people with Uchiha blood in their veins. I think it's always been another huge plot oversight that all of the Uchiha were killed, when you're telling me that nobody had, like, there were no Uchiha like cousins, you know what I mean? Like, I don't remember if they even like explained part of that, but they do have the same issue, I guess, with Hinata's clan and Neji's clan. It's just like they're kind of like, they have a Targaryen thing going on, I guess, where they have like these inbred clans. And I think like if you're going off of Japanese culture and Japanese clans and samurai and all that, like they mingled with other clans, like for political reasons, for sometimes, love finds a way, Travis. But
well, I mean, it's literally a plot point in Naruto.
What do you mean?
Like with even with like Naruto's mom, right? She was a descendant.
Yes, exactly.
She was a splinter off of Hashirama's clan.
Exactly. So then when you look at that and you're like, well, there could be like people who have Uchiha, grandparents or great grandparents. And you could have this thing where like, what is Sasuke's function if not like reigniting the police force, having an ACAP storyline? Don't worry, Travis, wouldn't leave that out for you. But having Sasuke take up that position and sort of being a little bit more of like a patriarch kind of character, and Sarada kind of turning into someone like Naruto because she feels like he, values people no matter their family ties, unlike Sasuke. And then Boruto valuing Sasuke for being the person who does like treat family as a first foundation, and having that kind of rivalry between the two of them, looking at each other's fathers as the right way like that's where you have, I think, a more interesting series. But we just don't have that at all. But then, of course, you have Mitsuki, the wonderful wild card whose father is like basically Hitler, and we just never talk about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, the anime did, and it was great. But
yes, that's true.
But
because I do remember when the manga revealed, the manga just dropped that like right there, and like Boruto and Sarada just look at him like, what? Oh, okay.
It's like, your dad's just a war criminal, and then like, in fairness, so are theirs. So. Like,
I think Sarada is sense. Not the best position. Is Naruto considered a war criminal though?
I mean, no.
What did he war crime?
I mean, he's a head of state now, so I'm not putting this possibility outside. I'm not going outside the realm of possibility anymore.
I would say Sasuke for sure. Sasuke's redemption is paper. Yeah.
So.
At least with Orochimaru, you could say he died at a certain point, so at least he got some kind of consequence.
He's agreed to terms, right? They keep an eye on him. He's not allowed to just go do stuff, right? Like,
I don't get. I generally one of those, the Orochimaru stuff I don't understand. Why did he change?
Allowing Orochimaru to continue is probably Naruto's war crime.
There you go. You know what? There it is. You found it.
But what Sasuke's actually doing in the Boruto series is my biggest complaint, because
where he just like goes on spy missions.
No, it's what he's doing spy missions for. It's the lingering space crap from the end of Naruto, and God help me, I hate that stuff. I hate that stuff so much. Like you mentioned earlier, like a lot of this world building in Naruto and Boruto has the unintended consequence of just sapping all of the magic away from this world. I will go one step further and say that it completely decimates it. The Kaguya reveal, the whole descended clans, you're actually like reincarnations, like all of that the back part of Naruto decides to dedicate all of its time and attention to is an absolute waste of time. It does nothing for the story but needlessly complicate it, overextend things, and at the end of the day, the final boss is less interesting than Cell Max was in that last Dragon Ball movie. I don't know why I'm beating up Dragon Ball so much today, but I am.
I mean, me too.
But genuinely, it was such a wet tissue of an ending. And I think that's why the anime decided to find a different way to end it, by the way, is because I think it's such an anticlimactic conclusion. But the Boruto manga structurally exists primarily to try to retroactively make all of that work by creating a situation that requires us to care about it.
And that to me is my lingering hang up from both of these series. This series is nothing but retcons.
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of the, basically from the moment Itachi Uchiha hit the ground dead, Naruto's been a series of retcons.
Because I think that
more so than normal.
That's why I think that Kishimoto was like up until the very end changing his mind on what he wanted to do. I think he got to a point where he had set it up. So the final battle was going to be Naruto versus Madara. And then he was like, wait, no, it would make more sense for it to be Naruto and Sasuke teaming up against like this larger than life villain. And then he's like, but I don't have one ready. So then he just threw that together. And it was like, look, that larger than life villain can't be an Uchiha because thematically Naruto teaming up with Sasuke against an Uchiha doesn't really quite work. So we're just going to do this like Kaguya thing. It's like, this like the stakes couldn't be higher. And that's why it feels to me like it's retconning. It's sort of like one of the major issues of like Marvel and DC comics. It's like the same kind of thing where they keep changing in their mind and like they keep trying to like overly listen to the fans maybe. And maybe, I think like the Naruto and Sasuke stuff, the reason that got so overplayed is because there was this perception that that was the most popular thing about Naruto. That's what everybody wanted to see because the Naruto Sasuke fight was such a big deal. But then we have Shippuden, which is just like every OP, even if Sasuke is not even mentioned, it's like the OPs are constantly like Naruto and Sasuke like with their backs against each other, over like some kind of melodramatic music because that's what sold the series, that anticipation of like their rematch. Yeah.
I mean, the whole narrative was arcing to that, and then right when it would have been like narratively the time to do it, when these two boys, and man, we are just doing Naruto therapy today, but when these two boys have accomplished their dreams, not necessarily in the most literal sense, but they've gotten over the biggest hurdles. In Naruto's case, it's the end of the pain fight. The entire village is cheering for him as a hero. That is the moment where he basically became Hokage. And I don't mean like that as like, this is the day he became president thing, but like, that was when he got the thing he wanted the most. And in 20 years, if he became the Hokage, not a single person in that village would have had a single complaint about it. Like that was the moment, right? And then for Sasuke, it is the Itachi fight where he finds out that there was more to it than that, and that Itachi did love him more than anything else, to the point that he was willing to become a monster in order to protect him. Like those two things were the necessary pieces to get us to the end of that story. And it just kept
It just kept going. Yeah, because we have to do the whole fourth Shinobi War. This thing is too popular to finish off at its,
right. And there's a lot about Boruto, especially in the, not before the time skip. We'll spoilers, there's a time skip. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But like, there are pieces of that feel like, again, the same. They're trying to drag this out and make it more epic than it really is. And I just cannot be mustered to care.
Okay. I mean, I'll admit I struggle to care as well, but I think at the very least, Boruto is sort of like it is a series and a version of this story that's trying to learn or unlearn some of the Naruto mistakes, and sometimes it does it well a little bit. I think in terms of like certain characters that have come along, like Amado, for example. And, just the way like the code stuff is sort of set up and the rivalry between Boruto and Kawaki, I think like that's when Boruto starts to find its way, is when it starts to lean into the side characters, make this thing whole. When we get the really nice character designs again, and we start to, I don't know, just have like a little bit of style to this. And some of the fights are a little bit more strategic. And I think the kneecapping of certain characters to make that happen is good too. I do wish that there was just a little bit more of like a commentary in Boruto, like on Sasuke and Naruto. But I think that's why the saving grace is that Naruto and Sasuke are not the main characters. And so I think that's why like I'm as okay with it as I am once we get into like the final 20 or 30 chapters of the Boruto manga. So I'm not talking about where it is now. We just started Boruto 2 Blue Vortex, which you already kind of leaned into, to which I would say is going pretty well. Just 2 chapters, long chapters to be fair. I do think that like there is some kind of narrative happening now that I'm a bit invested into, because I just think the motivations of the characters are starting to like click a little bit more. Because like, what's the motivation for Boruto all like for almost the entire manga up until the big stuff that happens? My dad be around more. Yay. Sometimes Sasuke throws the ball with me outside.
Yeah, it's stuff that the anime has to kind of pitch hit for, right?
It's one of those things where like the anime's filler is genuinely more entertaining to me than like the Boruto manga for a good chunk of it, quite honestly. Because at least the filler is like kind of exploring what is just an average shinobi like in this world. He's not, a nine-tailed beast. He doesn't have like these overwhelming powers. Boruto is kind of just like, he's as good as like everybody around him in this like series. Like nobody's like that strong. But he kind of just learns how to become stronger for the sake of his friends, and like they may build him up. And yeah, I don't know. It's just, he's not pining after Sarada. Sarada's not like overly pining after him. You just kind of get like a chill ninja school anime, which is kind of what Naruto was supposed to be like when it started, right?
Well, and even when Naruto like a part of what like made Naruto click for a lot of people, myself included, is when it did first kind of get away from that. The Zabuza stuff, where yes, it got real for a hot minute. That was great. And there are moments in Boruto, especially on the anime side early on, where you do get pieces of that without having to completely let go of things. But there's not really there's not big kaiju battles, right? There's not these bizarrely complex, jutsus that don't make any sense in the context of the rules of the universe. Everything still kind of operates within its own logic, even if that logic is space logic now. And that does help it in certain aspects, I will say.
I mean, I think I connect so much with the Amado character when he has to like constantly explain things to the characters over heavy exposition, and he needs that cigarette. And I'm like, yeah, that's probably how Kishimoto feels like when he has to like explain to his editors and like, all right, this is what we're going to do. And they're like, but why is a divine tree doing this? Like, he takes a big drag from the cigarette. Okay. So that's just how I feel.
Amen. Amen.
Another thing,
I guess. Well, go ahead. I was going to say we should probably start doing the spoiler wording, because we're getting real close to.
We're getting close.
Plot.
This isn't a spoiler necessarily, but it is a sort of like something that I think that Boruto doubles down on, that Naruto kind of flirted with but didn't fully deliver, is Shikamaru supremacy. Just in the sense that, first of all, Boruto and Shikadai being like really close friends, I think makes so much sense. And I think that they have a really good dynamic, even as like they're on different teams and everything. But you see like why they would be childhood friends, why they would get along as much as they do. And it's just kind of, heartening, because it's the kind of friendship I think Naruto and Shikamaru kind of develop as well early on in Naruto. But Shikamaru himself, seeing him have like such an elevated presence, especially as we go into like the next manga series, I think is really smart, because to me, Shikamaru constantly represents where Naruto as a series is at its best, which is fights that aren't just about I'm stronger than you. Shikamaru has always been like a character who wins fights even if he's not the most powerful opponent. That makes him an underdog. That absolutely like fits the vein of Boruto, who he himself is not the strongest person by a long shot. But I think that like the show, the anime, all of this stuff, leaning into Shikamaru as a character, great choice. So, that's all.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that Naruto had more friends than Sasuke. You know what I mean? Like it's genuinely nice, because he's still doing his tactics thing, and it's a perfect evolution of his character.
So what were you going to bring up though before? Are we getting into the two blue vortex of it all?
I think there is at least one specific plot point that you and I have not discussed, but we absolutely
Hinata
have to.
Being basically like shortchanged.
Oh, you mean every woman retiring?
Yeah, no, 1010's failed business.
No, there's a very specific one. And you'll recall it because it broke you for like 2 days straight in our direct messages. But it is a plot spoiler, so we should probably put that warning up now.
Here it is. All right.
Three, two, one. This is it. Your pause. Jiraiya clone.
Yeah,
They cloned Jiraiya.
They cloned Jiraiya. There should be a band called that. Man, why? Travis?
Jiraiya is my favorite Naruto character. I adore everything about Jiraiya.
It was the last impactful death. Sorry, Neji.
Oh, I mean, yeah, because death became a minor inconvenience in Naruto after that.
Yeah.
But like,
I will say Shikamaru's dad dying and Ino's dad dying. That was kind of definitely like I felt that. And also, I would say that Asura dies before Jiraiya, correct?
Oh yeah. That was that. Oh, that arc is so good, actually. Like,
yeah. That was an impactful death too. But I think that was like Naruto at its peak was when you had two major mentor characters in a row die and the pain stuff happens. And it felt like you said, this is where the show is like the story, I should say, is naturally reaching its boiling point. Time to wrap things up. Oh, okay, we're going to the land of snow. Okay.
Yeah, right. And nothing against Killer Bee. I think he's a fun character. I'm never going to complain about a mangaka trying to introduce characters of color. They could have done that and still wrapped the story up, though.
It could have been worse in some ways.
It's true. It could have been very worse, right? Dragon Ball. But yeah, they cloned Jiraiya, man, for reasons that still haven't 100% clicked in my head yet. It just kind of feels like a thing that happens.
I just want to know who did it. We still don't know anything.
Yeah, like he's still hypothetically alive, and spoilers, they've done nothing with it since since he did his last thing.
And as I was reading it, I was thinking to myself, oh, interesting, because if we have a Jiraiya clone and we have Naruto losing, another major spoiler, losing Kurama dies. And so you have this opportunity for Naruto to kind of come into the story again way more as an underdog, because how has Naruto progressed as a character just in his Sage mode and those abilities? Because I think once he did his Nine Tails chakra mode, he kind of stopped being, I think, an interesting shonen protagonist. He started being like a demigod kind of character, which I don't love, but if you're going to do that, you're going to do that. I think it does lose a lot of the charm of like Naruto being a really powerful shinobi in his own right. And then when Boruto decided like we're going to bring him back to those basics, I was like, man, we could have another really triumphant Naruto kind of moment where even without Kurama, without the Nine Tails, how has he grown in other ways? I was ready to see like, oh my gosh, he's going into Sage mode. He probably has been preparing for a situation where he can't rely on Kurama. Let's see. Oh, he doesn't do anything. Oh yeah, he didn't even need to activate Sage mode because when he got there, the battle was okay. I was like, oh, the Jiraiya clone doesn't come back into play. Yeah, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah, and like we don't even get to see his real reaction to that for a death that really hit that character hard. We do not get to dwell, and I know it's not Naruto's story. Complaining about Boruto's dad, feels kind of like a whinge a bit, but you think he would have a more visceral reaction.
Yeah. Well, I would only push back in the sense that I don't think this is really Boruto's story. I think this is one of those stories where like Boruto's a main character, but I think it's one of those things where I think the story serves a lot of different arcs for a lot of different characters. And at any given moment, a character can be the main. Sarada, I think, is a good example of that. I think that she is positioned well as a character in a lot of respects, to the point where there are times when she kind of drives the narrative in a way that I think is really interesting. Kawaki becomes kind of our, kind of the shadow protagonist in a very deliberately written way, right? And you can kind of understand a lot of his motivations. He's not like a twirling mustache villain at all, but he's also severely misguided, and there's a lot going on there. So I think that like having Naruto go on like a different journey too serves this kind of story, because we can just sort of like move over to his side of things for a bit. Same thing with Shikamaru. That's been the case. There's been entire chapters where Shikamaru is the one in the driver's seat that we're following, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess we should talk about Kawaki, because he is a very interesting player in this story. For one,
I like how the story is just like, Kawaki, why are you so obsessed with Naruto, with the seventh Hokage? And he's like, I don't know. Like, it is kind of weird. He says it.
It's interesting though, because he is set up as this character, and you know from the jump that he's supposed to be an antagonist. That it is literally the very first page. Like, his arrival in the story is meant to be a big stinking deal, and you find out that he, much like actual good Naruto villains, really actually has an excuse for the way that he is. I don't think that he's necessarily likable. I don't think he had, I think there's parts where his personality really falters in the story that could be chalked up to the writing. But, like you said, he's not a mustache twirling villain. There is a significant part of him that is just, I'm doing the thing that I think is right. Not even like I'm motivated by vengeance or like, I'm going to be the bad guy, Sasuke stuff, but like genuinely like, no, I have hang-ups and I don't know how to deal with them in any other way than this.
Yeah, he is a result and a victim of trauma.
He is, and it ends up influencing Boruto as well. There's a moment, and, we're talking about spoilers, so I'm just going to go into it. There's that moment where the two of that where Boruto is being controlled by, why am I blanking on his name? He's so uninteresting. Momoshiki. Because the twist, of course, for people who are listening and didn't listen to the spoiler warning, is that Boruto becomes a host to one of these clan members who was the same species that Kaguya was. He becomes a host and he's trying to take over his body, kind of like the tailed beasts. And so that's happening. And the two of them make this knowing nod to each other, because Kawaki was also a host at one point. And you find out that off screen, the two of them had a serious conversation, and that, if this was the thing that happened, hey, you've got to be the one to do this, because you are the only person who understands enough to know that this is the thing I want to happen. Mm-hmm. And that's really interesting. Like, it's not the kind of thing that I would normally appreciate being off screen, but it allows it to be such a shock moment, and not in like a robbing way, but in a, these characters actually do know each other more than they let on from their emotions. It's the kind of stuff where like the little bits of early Naruto Sasuke during their first fight that seep through, it has that same kind of vibe.
Yeah, it's such a fun alternate way to do a Naruto series, which is, what if it was from the perspective of Sasuke and Sasuke was right, essentially. And that's kind of what Boruto is doing. It's essentially being like, all right, now Boruto is going to be the one who is on the outs. The whole village wants to hunt down, except like from the perspective of Sasuke when he left the village. But in this case, he did it for a way more sympathetic reason. And I like also that they kind of preserve Kawaki as a sympathetic villain, or not even a villain. He's not a villain. He's an antagonist. But they make him sympathetic because he doesn't do that on purpose. Like, it's not a situation that he created or masterminded. It was just dumb sort of luck in his case, based on a character who likes him and he doesn't even know why or understand why, and him just kind of going along with it, which I think that was the right way to go about it. So that's why I think Two Blue Vortex is so much hype, because you start from that place of, this is the character who's been off training to become stronger. Everybody sees the hero as the villain. What is he going to do next? And that is just like a great way to do a Naruto story, where it's a story about ninjas. It's a story about like stealth and doing things quietly and like shifting motivations, and like, we're getting away from the Dragon Ball stuff. We're getting away from the sort of like, I've got to turn Super Saiyan 6 because right now Super Saiyan 5. I mean, it's never going to work. This character is, super, Namekian 12. And so, like, no, none of that stuff. Like, throw your scouter away, Travis. We don't need it.
Yeah, I will say the setup that triggers the time skip was very eye-rolling for me.
Not me. I was like, cool. Let's go with that.
The consequences of it are interesting, because it does it does play into the idea that Boruto is a different person than Naruto, and that is, Boruto lived in a world of relative peace, and in as much as he tries to understand Kawaki and people like Kawaki, he doesn't have that life experience. And so they've created the most convoluted magic nonsense possible to put him in that situation. But that's the person who comes in this time skip when Two Blue Vortex starts. And unlike Naruto, who comes back in Shippuden and is more or less, internally the same character, which is probably correct for Naruto. I'm going to be honest, because like him always being headstrong and having that lighthearted personality in spite of things is kind of the point of him. Boruto's definitely came from being someone who just didn't struggle enough, for lack of, getting into the weeds on it. But he comes back in this in these two chapters, and his demeanor has changed. His stance has changed. He's not acting with swagger, but he is confident. And maybe most importantly, he's trying to be rational. He's trying to reason with code, and he's saying, hey, this is not going to go the way that you think it is. We can just stop this. Like it's kind of funny he's doing the talk no jutsu joke, but it seems to really come from somebody who, has been kind of out in the wilderness for a while. And of course, the time skip is a significantly longer time than the Naruto one was too.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. Just in the sense that I think what makes Boruto an interesting character at this point is that, yeah, he didn't struggle, but he's not a character who I think complains about that.
He's not
anime.
Spoiled, but I think people had the perspective that he was, and this really does feel like a course correct.
And
but
that's the thing, is like the stuff he whines about is not like, I want to, go on adventures or do these. I want people to trust me like they trust my dad, or like I want to be as great as my dad. It's none of that. It's just sort of like, I just kind of want to, like, I'm trying to remember exactly. I think he just, like, in the very beginning, he just wants to hang out with his friends. He wants to have a peaceful family life. He wants to have a normal life in some ways. And he feels like what's normal is to be a shinobi, but he doesn't take it nearly as seriously as everybody else, I guess. And I don't know. I think like as it goes on, he becomes capable and he feels like an obligation almost to kind of do what he does, because he, I think, feels as if, his dad did all of these great things. It's sort of expected of him, but I think he kind of like rejects the idea that he should be like his dad, that he should be Hokage or any of this stuff. And I think that that's more interesting. It's more, to me, makes more sense than having a character who constantly lives in the shadow of his dad, because we already got that story with Naruto himself.
Right.
And I like that Boruto is not like, I want the whole village to love me. I think he's just more of a Sasuke kind of character who's just like, I just want to help people if they need it. I don't need the credit.
Yeah,
because I think he sees the credit his father gets, and he sees how that alienates him from his family. So it makes total sense.
Yeah, and he literally says like he would rather be a support person, and there's nothing inherently wrong about that. And it's an interesting way for the story to go. And I think
he has a mother too, and that's more Hinata's bag,
Yeah, and again, whatever else you can say, Two Blue Vortex opens, and it opens on Sarada, which is a marked improvement over the previous story.
I think so, because Sarada is like, she's the one who does want to be Hokage. And I think that, again, it would make way more sense if, I just never understood why Sasuke like basically ignores her. He's like, your entire deal was like wanting, I know I already brought this up, but like bringing the Uchiha back, and like he's just sort of like, yeah, I guess I have a kid. I guess that's the future of all the Uchiha, and she'll be fine. You know what I mean? It just does not make sense to me. But what are you gonna do?
Yeah, it's very funny that Sasuke is Boruto's Piccolo, but is also Sarada's Goku.
Yeah, there you go. The shadow of Dragon Ball will just never leave this series, I guess. Not fully. I do hope, too, that like Two Blue Vortex kind of returns to the kind of interesting stuff about the Byakugan and how that manifests in Boruto. I know we're kind of headed for that. But... and I think like Two Blue Vortex is something that might be speaking a little bit to what we're going to get with him. What's your hope? Like, what's something that you think Boruto needs to do to kind of like, I don't know if even a return to form is right, but just to get to a place where it feels like something that you can recommend to people, I guess.
So I think... this is tough because, frankly speaking, there's like 80 odd chapters of manga going into this time skip. And it really does feel like, hey, it might get good eventually. There are a couple of moments that are, that will tug at your heartstrings if you suffered through Naruto. But if it wants to get out of, for lack of a better term, out of Naruto's shadow, out of the kind of the discourse that it exists in, it really has to to take these little bits that we've been pulling out as like, oh, this differentiates it and this might be interesting, and it needs to see that through. And that's gonna, what I would love to see is that little flash forward that we saw at the beginning of the manga and the anime. I would love for that to be a red herring. I would love for them to be willing to reconsider that instead of just doing another big full-scale, kaiju-esque battle like they did in Naruto. I would love for them to reevaluate that. And I kind of hope that that's what's happening here is there's a redirect to making something maybe a little bit more nuanced, something a little bit more personal rather than in the grand scale.
It's kind of already done that to an extent, right? It's right. Some things about that have been explained of like, it looks like when he says like, I'll send you where I sent the seventh Hokage, he apparently is talking about this like shadow world.
Right. So it does look like we're getting like context for it, but I really, really want them to make sure that scale doesn't become the thing that it cares most about, right? They need to really pull out, I think, a more nuanced ending and really, really take these threads that we've got and not just make them threads. Because a lot of these threads were things that Naruto sometimes flirted with and then just never saw through. Because at the end of the day, it had to do the Sasuke Naruto fight and conflict, and they had to walk away from each other in the OPs. You were there. So it really needs to differentiate itself in a way that makes it possible for a hater to go, well, at least it's not Naruto. That would be a success.
How would you react if we got to the point where it's the end of Boruto and we do find out that all of this has been happening in the infinite Tsukuyomi with the moon stuff at the end of Naruto Shippuden whole thing? It was all a dream. How would you react? What would you say? What would you text me?
Oh my God, what would I would probably just slap my hand directly on the keyboard several times in frustration.
Probably be more coherent than certain pages of Boruto.
And then go on my own 3-year time skip into the wilderness because
oh my gosh.
Oh man, what a story that was. what a manga.
What a time to be alive. Yeah, well, I think that's all we got for the Boruto of it all. A lot of stuff, and I think we could go on. But I think we covered the main stuff, the sprawling topics, right? Unless you had anything else that you felt like we didn't cover as much. Is there anything that Boruto does that we didn't say a lot about, like what Naruto does better? A lot of that I think has already been discussed and a lot of it's probably self-explanatory. But do you think Naruto is better in any regard, that like a very specific regard we haven't mentioned?
I mean, at the grand scheme of things, Naruto, despite all of the retcons and changes that it makes, it is a much stronger story. It has a much firmer sense of its identity, especially once it hits its stride with the Zabuza arc. From that point on, Naruto is straight up on fire.
And Boruto has never had, I think, nearly the same highs as Naruto
absolutely
did.
Not. Absolutely not. There are moments, but a lot of those moments are owed to work in the Naruto manga. Kurama fading away, sacrificing himself from Naruto for Naruto's sake is an excellent end to a character.
Yep. Agreed.
But it is one where all the legwork was done in a different series. Boruto doesn't get to own that.
That's right.
Even the stuff where like Naruto and Sasuke fight together in the anime, which is an exquisite Sakuga sequence. I mean, the only reason any of that works is because, again, all of the work and groundwork laid in Naruto. And you know what? The last Naruto Sasuke fight in the anime is incredible too. So like, there's nothing there that we haven't either seen before or isn't just an evolution of. And those are not bad things, but they're glimmers of something that's special rather than, a real streak, a real unique strength. That's, again, what I would really like to see. Both Boruto and Naruto do Chunin exams that go terribly wrong and lead to the village being invaded. One of them is the gold standard for a tournament arc, is a way of doing things that's still aped to this day, and the other one is Boruto. Like there's tons that Naruto does better. And I would say, up again till like about the Pain arc and the Itachi fight arc, Naruto is a great series to be into. It just loses its way at the end there.
Agreed on basically everything you said. One other thing that I think, Naruto kind of has, it's like a good and a bad thing. It's like it has way more flashbacks in its fight scenes, and a lot of its fights get dragged out a lot, which on the one hand, that can be a good thing because I think some of those flashbacks are some of the like best writing in Naruto. It's like when we dig back and dig behind the curtain and kind of see what makes these characters tick, the villains especially. I mean, that's where Naruto really cooks. But then at the same token, like sometimes the pacing isn't great. And it's like, you have these fights that take forever to get to the point. Whereas I think Boruto is a little bit more, because I think it's suiting a younger demographic. It has more of an attention span kind of deficit that it takes into consideration, which, it's its own thing. It's something that you can appreciate or dislike depending on your own preference.
Well, format's a factor in this too. Boruto gets more pages, but it also gets less releases. So you have to fit more in the meat of the actual like fight. For example, you can't dedicate 3 months to a flashback because that flashback isn't happening 4 times a month. It's happening 1 time a month. You've got to figure out the formatting differently. And that, that has advantages and weaknesses for sure.
We'll be back next week for, fittingly, a manga recap for the next One Piece chapter. I think we're on One Piece 1094, and I haven't read it yet, but I'm very much looking forward to the next 2 weeks. I think we have 2 straight One Piece manga recaps that we're going to be able to do, so very excited about that. And I think we have some other big stuff coming along the line. I know we talked about Frieren at the beginning of this thing, and how that anime is kicking off. I also have been doing the thing that I said I would do a long time ago, which is watch Jujutsu Kaisen again and put up with it, basically the part that I didn't want to watch. And I did it, Travis. I made it through the like first prequel arc thing with Gojo. I did it.
You saw my boyfriend's breakup.
It was about what I expected, but I'm definitely getting to a point where it's like I'm still a little bit like, what are we doing here? But I will say that it is getting better, as you said it would, and I believed you because I was like, well, it can't get worse. But I'm just joking.
No, it's rough that they put the flashback where they put it. It is necessary for what happens in Shibuya, which I guess I can refer to a little bit more now because it's technically not a spoiler anymore. But it is necessary. It's one of those things where if they had done it in the middle of Shibuya Naruto style, you would have hated it. So.
I could see that. Well, I think for me, it was just like I wanted sort of like, it's been years since the first season, and I felt like I needed kind of like a settling in period of like, let's get back together with these characters and see what they're up to. And I feel like just that hasn't been there. I just feel like it's being treated like I just binged the first season, which I didn't. So I think that's one of the reasons I'm a little frustrated. Is there anything else? Anime or manga wise that's is going to be up your list this coming week that you're up to reading, loving, enjoying?
I mean, it's we got a preview. This is not necessarily this next week, but we got a preview of 2 anime that I'm very excited for. And now that it seems less likely that the strikes will impact them, I'm even more excited. But we got another look at Pluto. These were Netflix previews. We got another look at Pluto, which I'm very excited about. I'm very glad that's finally coming out. And we also got a preview of the Science Saru Scott Pilgrim adaptation.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm a big Scott Pilgrim fan. Loved the movie. I've been very curious to see what they do with this material because it's not supposed to be a straight adaptation of either the comics or the movie.
But it kind of takes from both, doesn't it?
Well, they said that it takes from both, but they've also either made some changes or added things. They're being very coy about it.
I was going to say, because I've seen a couple of clips online where like they literally are recreating scenes from the movie.
Yeah, they put one out where it's he's doing the online order. In the movie, it's Amazon, and it's in the anime, it's a Netflix DVD, which is just a fun, cute thing. And like that scene has been extended for a gag, which I think is a really good choice. But at the same time, there's that really like scumbag kiss poster on Scott's wall that they have meticulously recreated to the detail on his wall. that's in the movie, and it's such a dirtbag thing for him to have on that wall, and I love that. I love those little details that they put in.
Nice.
Science Saru stays winning.
We still have some time, right? That's not till like November.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a preview for people who read our coverage on In Between Drafts. It will literally release the day of our cutoff for end of year nominations, so it will just get under the line.
There you go. All right. So there is that. And on my end, I'm still just watching Am I Actually the Strongest? And you know what I have been watching too? ReZero, which I know I kind of maybe mentioned that I was reading the light novel and I didn't love it a while ago.
Were you watching it before, or is this your first time watching? I want to say it's the first time we've really had the anime come up.
It's the first time I've watched. I think I started the anime a while ago. I might have mentioned that, like kind of very briefly at some point. But I'm actually like several episodes in. I think I'm like on episode 5 or 6, maybe more than that actually. And I'm watching it, and it's an isekai. It sure is an isekai. It's an interesting isekai.
It's one that I'm even familiar with, and I think from what I know of it and what I've seen of it, it's going to end up being very much up your alley.
There you go. Okay. Well, we will hopefully be doing more anime check-ins too in the coming weeks. So hit us up on the Discord. I'm very excited to check out this Discord that Travis was, really hyping up earlier. But if I understand correctly, Travis, I mean, people are going to be able to talk about all the anime and manga that to their heart's desire in the Discord community. It sounds great to me.
Oh, yeah. And again, not just anime and manga. We're talking about all kinds of things. Anything that the site covers, we have channels for, and we're hanging. You and I are in there like every single day. So if you want to come in and tell us.
I like wake up in the middle of the night and like, well, hold on.
I've had a One Piece theory.
There you go. Well, usually the One Piece stuff I just send to you privately, so we can I can get it through the censors. That's you. All right. Hope to see you all there. And thanks so much for listening to Rookie Pirate Radio. As usual, we'll see you all on the next one.